It's blatantly obvious modern entertainment feels different now. There are hundreds of movies and TV shows that people still consider classics decades later. Shows of the people who grew up in the late 90s and early 2000s still go back and rewatch them today. Disney Channel sitcoms, Cartoon Network cartoons, Nickelodeon shows, and tons of classic animated movies. All of it. And yeah, going back now, some of them have a lot of cringe moments and goofy writing, but despite that, they had personality, they had creativity, they felt like people genuinely cared about making something memorable. A lot of modern fiction doesn't feel the same way. It feels manufactured, not completely soulless, because there are still talented writers, directors, actors, and artists working today. But the industry itself feels less focused on telling great stories and more focused on creating products designed to maximize engagement, subscriptions, and short-term profit. And honestly, I think a huge reason for this comes down to fear. Hollywood has become terrified of risk. The easiest place to see this is in movies. Studios now rely heavily on giant pre-existing IPs, sequels, remakes, reboots, cinematic universes, live action adaptations, and nostalgia bait. Instead of asking what's the best story we can tell, the question often feels more like what already has a fan base attached to it. And to be fair, there's a reason for that. In 2021, Matt Damon explained in an interview that one of the biggest changes in Hollywood came from the death of DVDs. Back then, a movie didn't have to rely on box office profits to make its money. Even if it underperformed in theaters, studios could still make huge profits later through DVD sales, rentals, reruns, licensing, and syndication. That second wave of revenue gave studios breathing room. It allowed filmmakers to take risks on smaller or stranger projects because movies had time to become profitable over the years. But streaming changed that entire system. Now, if a project doesn't immediately drive subscriptions, engagement, or massive opening weekend numbers, studios often just see it as a failure. So what happens? Budgets get bigger, risks get smaller, and everything starts feeling safer, flatter, and more formulaic. And the crazy thing is, some of the biggest entertainment companies in history were built because people did take risks. Look at the biggest entertainment company in the world, coming from Walt Disney. When he made Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, people thought making a full-length animated movie was pretty insane, very abnormal. And if it failed, Disney as a company would have pretty much collapsed. But he believed animation could be treated with the same artistic importance as live action film. Even earlier than that, Steamboat Willie changed animation by synchronizing sound with movement and comedy in a way audiences never seen before. I'm not saying studios should gamble their entire existence on every project. The point is, Hollywood used to experiment more. Creators were allowed to throw weird ideas at the wall and see what stuck. Sometimes it failed horribly, but sometimes it created something iconic. Now it feels like studios are just chasing formulas instead of creativity, and TV has suffered from this too. People still talk about shows like The Suite Life of Zack and Cody, Wizards of Waverly Place, Hannah Montana, a bunch of the classic Cartoon Network shows, and other Nickelodeon cartoons like SpongeBob and Fairly Odd Parents. Those shows had identity. They had memorable characters, unique humor, and writers were willing to experiment. Now, TV shows, especially the one that were released originally on streaming services, now feel like they're just designed by the algorithm. Shorter seasons, faster pacing, constant cliffhangers, endless serialization. Every show trying to become the next big thing. And these shorter seasons don't even feel like seasons anymore. We get 8 episodes, sometimes 6, maybe 10 or 12 if we're lucky. Meanwhile, older network television used to regularly have 20 to 24 episodes a season. That mattered because it gave viewers time to actually live with the characters. Writers had room for slower moments, side stories, weird experimental episodes, emotional development, and self-contained adventures. Not every episode had to push one giant storyline forward. And that episodic structure was important because it created variety. One week could be emotional, the next hilarious, the next creepy, the next completely just off the walls. It kept shows unpredictable and gave writers creative freedom to try things. Now almost everything has to serve one massive overarching plot. And after a while, it gets exhausting. You can't just jump into a show anymore. Miss one episode and suddenly you have no idea what's going on. There's also the issue of momentum. A 22 episode season airing weekly could stay in public conversation and the public mind for pretty much half the year. Then maybe 6 months later, the next season would arrive. The fan base stayed engaged because the show never really disappeared. Now people wait 2 or even 3 years between seasons. It used to feel so out of the ordinary for a show to have that long of a time period between seasons. Shows like Rick and Morty or Steven Universe, for example. People were unsure if those shows were even going to come back or if they just got flat out canceled. But now studios or companies, they announce that the next season will be the next year or 2 years later, or they'll come back at this time. And in a world of non-stop distractions, that just kills momentum. By the time the next season finally releases, audiences have already moved on to 10 other shows, 20 controversies, 50 TikTok trends, and 100 forms of entertainment competing for attention. And speaking of TikTok, modern entertainment absolutely feels influenced by shrinking attention spans. A lot of movies today feel like fast food content. Loud visuals, constant action, quick cuts, big celebrities, massive CGI spectacles, everything designed to grab your attention instantly before you scroll away. But memorable storytelling usually needs patience. It needs build-up, atmosphere, character development, quiet moments, and that patience feels like it's disappearing. Another major problem is just streaming itself. Streaming didn't just change how we watch entertainment, it changed how entertainment is made. Streaming used to actually be a great alternative to cable. There were no ads, it was cheaper, you could watch whatever you want, whenever you want. But when every company wants to hop on the streaming trend and make their own original shows within that streaming platform, that's when things start to fall apart. Everyone locks their content behind subscriptions instead of licensing it out. So instead of movies and shows making money through multiple revenue streams like theaters, cable reruns, etc., everything now depends on keeping subscribers paying monthly fees. So they're not making any real profit because they have to bank on that. And that just creates a whole different mindset and business model. Studios stop asking, will this become beloved over time? And start asking, will people keep their subscription? That pressure leads to rushed productions, shorter seasons, constant cancellations. And like I keep repeating like a broken record, safer storytelling. And when studios do take risks, now it's often just with nostalgia, if you can even call it a risk. That's why we're drowning in remakes and reboots. And honestly, remakes themselves are not the problem. A remake, a reboot, or adaptation can be amazing if it builds on the original story and adds something beautiful or meaningful. But too often now, studios remake stories without understanding what made people love them in the first place. A lot of these projects feel visually bigger with all the designs and CGI added to it, but emotionally they're emptier, especially with certain live action remakes. It feels like studios are so focused on realism and CGI spectacles that they forget the charm, personality, stylization, and emotional storytelling that made originals iconic. And sometimes they even remove important elements while adding nothing meaningful in return. And I think the most blatant, obvious example is Mulan, the Mulan live action. They took away the songs, they took away her purpose, and no one liked it. No one asked for anything like that. If you're going to retell a story, there should be a reason for it to exist. Not just you want to recapture the magic from when it originally released. You should improve something, expand something, or reinterpret something. Otherwise, it just feels like recycling. That's exactly what it is, actually, recycling. And ironically, this is why smaller studios and indie projects are becoming more beloved. They're often forced to rely on creativity because they can't rely on billion-dollar franchises or giant marketing campaigns. They take chances, they experiment, they actually try to stand out. And to be fair, not everything today is bad. There are still incredible modern movies and shows. Off the top of my head, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse in 2023. Sony gave directors the freedom to blend 6 entirely distinct artistic styles, from watercolor comic aesthetics to punk rock collage, all weaved into a single narrative. And now it's widely considered one of the greatest animated achievements in cinema history. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish in 2022. DreamWorks reinvented the visual art style of the Shrek universe, and it shocked audiences. But the film tackled mature themes like mortality and panic attacks with incredible nuance, while also delivering legendary action choreography. The Batman from 2022 from Warner Brothers. Instead of a traditional superhero spectacle, the director Matt Reeves crafted a gritty 3-hour neo-noir detective thriller heavily inspired by the 1970s cinema. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 had genuinely emotional storytelling. Great entertainment still exists, and not everything from the past was amazing either. A lot of older movies and shows were terrible, cringy, didn't make any sense. As the saying goes, 90% of everything is crap. But that's just the reality. But I do think the industry itself has changed in a way that makes it harder for creativity to thrive consistently. Entertainment today feels more corporate, calculated, and disposable. And honestly, I think Hollywood needs to change direction before storytelling loses even more of its soul. Now, I'm not an industry expert, but based on everything I've watched, read, and thought about, I think there are a few things that can genuinely help. First thing, lower budgets. When every movie costs $250 million, studios become terrified of failure. Mid-budget films gave filmmakers room to experiment without needing every project to become a global mega hit. Second, stop prioritizing endless content over memorable stories. Streaming created quantity over quality mindset. Companies constantly need new content to keep subscribers engaged, which leads to rushed productions and forgettable storytelling. Fewer projects with more behind them would probably create stronger long-term success anyway. Third, bring back multiple revenue streams. Older entertainment can make money through theaters and everything else that I mentioned before, including merchandise. Merchandise is a big thing for shows to make money. Streaming compress everything into subscription. If we expand how projects make money again, it will reduce the pressure for instant success. Fourth, and I don't know if companies would be willing to do that. I mean, they pretty much do it already because they're failing. But they need to allow more licensing between streaming services. Right now, audiences are exhausted. There are too many services to go around, and no one wants to pay for all of them because we're all broke. Every company wants viewers trapped inside their own platform, which just create the worst parts of cable. Sharing content across services would help projects reach larger audiences and stay culturally relevant longer. Fifth, reduce executive interference. Too many projects feel designed by a committee. When every decision is filtered through trend analysis, demographics, and corporate branding, stories lose individuality. Most iconic stories come from creators with strong personal visions. Like, creativity and executive powers don't necessarily mix well together. And lastly, bring back what I call event television. Weekly releases, longer seasons, and stronger episodic storytelling gave audiences time to connect with characters and build communities around the shows. Entertainment felt like an experience people shared together instead of content they consumed in one weekend and forgot 3 days later. At the end of the day, I think that's what people really miss. Not just old entertainment for nostalgia purposes or back in my day type things. People miss the passion. They miss the creativity. They miss stories that felt like somebody genuinely cared about making something memorable instead of simply manufacturing content to fill a release schedule. And honestly, it's pretty sad because there are so many amazing ideas out there that are just waiting to be made and waiting to be put into shows. I talk about it with my brother all the time on how we would rewrite a show or a movie or what should have been put in it. And it seems blatantly obvious. Like, two random dudes who don't work in entertainment at all are coming up with these ideas, but people who get paid millions, thousands, millions, billions of dollars to do this aren't putting this in their content. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and I'll see you guys later.